So thank you everybody for coming and for keeping up with us for these 5 classes so far, these 5 sessions. And Mamish, we're getting to some very, very serious stuff. If we continue to think about all the things that we're learning on the way here and how the path progresses, Mamish, we start to get to very, very serious things and very, very practical, deep, helpful aspects of our lives. And if we follow along step by step, chapter by chapter, then when we get to this chapter now, everything we say is going to be so much more meaningful based on the fact that we're going through the whole thing. So Mirz Hashem, we're starting to get now to the point where we're getting eitzes, and we're getting on to the advice and to the part of the story where we start to look for the princess and start to find the princess. So, Mirz Hashem, we'll do it together. Shmuley, what do you got to say? You're muted.
Yes, I am. No, I'm not. Okay, so just the technical announcements that we like to make at the beginning. Everybody, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Breslov Thornhill, and check out Yaakov Klein's website, lpitorah.org. And just a reminder, we're happy to have conversation and questions and comments in the latter part of our meetings here, but we also did set up an email address where people can write in during the week or anytime, questions or comments. It's bookclub@breslovthornhill.com. And with that, should we dive in?
Let's dive in. I just want to preface like this. So often we bring in ideas that are outside of the book that Rabbi Yaakov Klein wrote, and like from other sources. And sometimes we stick to the book. So today I have a lot of things to say that are outside of the book from other sources. And I think we'll kind of try to go back and forth. Maybe I'll start off with a few ideas, and then Shmuley can bring in some of the things from the book, and then we'll see how it all comes together. By the way, everyone should know that tonight, right now, is Asar B'Tevis, is the yahrzeit of the holy Reb Nosson of Breslov, who was, of course, Rabbi Nachman's Talmud Muvak and the main transmitter of all of the Torah of Rabbi Nachman, and probably the best example of a chassid that ever existed in ever. He was so bound to Rabbi Nachman, and his whole entire existence was Rabbi Nachman and his Torahs and his advice. And without Reb Nosson, we can't even say such a thing. But Reb Nosson is responsible for everything that we have. And he was such a tzaddik and he was such a huge Talmud Chacham. I hope you don't mind, I'm going to say a little bit of Reb Nosson. He was such a huge Talmud Chacham. He came from a family that was not a Chassidish family, and that were actually misnagdim. They were anti-Chassidim, and he married into a family his father-in-law was the rabbi of 3 provinces in Russia/Ukraine at that time. His name was Rav Orbach. And he was such a gigantic Talmud Chacham, this person, that Rav Nosson thought that how could it be possible even that Moshe Rabbeinu was as great as his father-in-law? And this is who his father-in-law was. Why am I telling you this? That there came a time when Rav Nosson himself was asked to take over for his father-in-law, to take over for this person and to be the rabbi of 3 provinces of Russia/Ukraine. He was such a huge Talmud Chacham. And when he met Rabbi Nachman, he basically gave himself over entirely to Rabbi Nachman, and became the scribe, became the channel through which Rabbi Nachman's Torah came into the world. But he was a huge Talmud Chacham, an unbelievable scholar. And if you read the writings of Rabbi Nosson, they're mamish out of this world. The main thing, I would say, there's a few main things, but the main thing that Rabbi Nachman asked him to do is to write, besides for Likutei Moharan, to transcribe it, to be the scribe, is to write Likutei Halachas. Likutei Halachas is basically, it goes through the entire Shulchan Aruch, the entire body of Jewish law, and for each section, he explains how that section of halacha can be seen on a deeper level based on the Torah of Rabbi Nachman. So he takes Jewish practice, Jewish law in every facet that you can imagine, and shows the unbelievable depths of Rabbi Nachman's Torahs shining through Jewish practice and Jewish law and everything that we do. It's totally, totally unbelievable, amazing. So we should all light a candle tonight for Reb Nosson ben Reb Naftali Hertz, and Le'ilu Nishmas Reb Nosson ben Naftali Hertz, and Mamash, we should be connected to Reb Nosson and learn his Svarim, just like and through him we'll be able to taste the Torah of Rabbi Nachman on an even deeper level. Okay, let's get going. So this section starts. It's called The Side Path to Spiritual Success. Shmuley, you want to read it in the first part?
Yeah, absolutely. So it says, the viceroy traveled here and there for a long time, through deserts, fields, and forests. He searched for her for a very long time. Finally, while traveling through the desert, he saw a path to the side and thought it over. Since I've traveled for so long in the desert, I cannot find her. Let me follow this path. Perhaps it will bring me to an inhabited area. And he walked for a very long time.
Right. Okay, so before we get into how this book is going to start, I want to bring some stuff that I heard from Reb Moshe Weinberger. Just at the very beginning, before we start to talk about the deserts and the field and the forest. So the first thing that this part of the story says is Hayahoylech ana ve'ana zman rav. He walked here and there for a very long time. So one of the things we can notice over here is that it's a little bit of a different, of an unusual word to use over here. You might think that someone is going on a journey to find someone, that it would be Hayanoiseya. He was traveling here and there, going to different places to try and find her. Hoylech is a lashon of walking. First of all, it means walking. But in another way, why is he using this word? Is it really means to be moving, movement. And one of the things that we can learn right at the very beginning of the story is that part of our efforts in finding the princess, part of our efforts in being successful in our journey, is that we always got to be on the journey. We always have to be hoylech. We always have to be moving. We always have to be going, right? I've heard this for the last 20 years, and it makes just as much sense now. People have said this mashal that in Yiddishkeit, in Judaism, if your life is like you're on a down escalator, you're trying to go up a down escalator. So if you're trying to go up a down escalator, as soon as you stop, if you stop walking, you start going down, right? As long as you're moving, you have to be moving in order to be progressing through existence. So the first thing that Rabbi Nachman tells us in the story is in the journey of the viceroy to find the princess, he's hoylech, he's moving, and it's zman rav, it's a long time. This movement, this going, is a long time. What does it mean? Why does it have to be such a long time? We're going to see throughout the story. It's many years here, many years there. It's a long story, and we already say in the very beginning that he's going to find her. So what's going on over here? So one of the other ideas over here is that why does the journey have to take so long? And what's he telling us? Sometimes we forget that really the ultimate finding of the princess is the purpose of our entire existence. It's our whole life's purpose, right? And it's such a schus to be united with the princess. And however we understand that, with tremendous spiritual inspiration, with yichud kutchabrichu shchinte, right? With the fixing of the universe, with the Shekhinah being visible and present in the world, Mashiach, Beis Hamikdash, all these things that the princess represents. What a schus! What a schus! This is the end goal. This is what we're looking towards, right? Hayahoylech ana va'ana. The whole book is a journey, and from the very beginning, the lesson that we're getting that's so important is the finding of the princess is not the goal. The goal is searching for the princess. The goal is looking. The goal is working towards it. Have you ever heard this thing that they say in the regular Welt, in the regular English world, that it's not about the end, it's about the journey, right? The journey that we're on is what the story is all about. And this is what he's saying from the very beginning. Hayahoylech ana va'ana. We always got to be moving. We always got to be going on this journey and moving. A very, very important point to start off with. And the story begins in the desert, and we see that the viceroy is looking in the desert, fields, and forest. What do you got for us, Shmuley? Desert, fields, and forest.
So first of all, we see that he goes to the desert, field, and forest, and then we return back to the desert, right? So to your point, it's not just a long journey, but sometimes you feel like you're going in circles, or you're literally going in circles. It does seem that way.
Right.
What's going to come out is that maybe it's not a circle; it's more of a spiral. But
right. Beautiful.
So, right, a spiral meaning it's a circle, but hopefully going up. Sometimes going down, but hopefully going up as well while we're going in circles, which is really what the Jewish calendar is also. I think it's the Ramchal that explains, I think he uses this terminology, that the Jewish calendar is really a spiral. It's not a circular calendar, it's a spiral-like calendar where we come to Pesach every year and we talk about getting into the mindset of freedom and cherus and everything that represents. And it's not, but if it's just a repetition of last year, then we're missing something. As you said, Rav Gisselson, we need to constantly be moving. So even if some of the sites look the same, we should be different by the next time we come around.
Right. Rav Detzler uses this mashal also, actually, when he explains the Jewish calendar. He says it's like imagine a train circuit where you have a train going around a track and there's stations on the track, right? So the Jewish calendar is like this. There's stations for every yontif along the track, right? But it's not a track that you go around every year and you hit the station every year. It's every year the track goes up and you hit, there's the station that was Pesach there. Now you're hitting it again. And next year you're going to come around higher. You're going to you're always moving towards a higher goal, but passing through the same stations every year. That's a beautiful analogy to what Rabbi Nachman is talking about in the story over here. Shmuley.
Except Rabbi Nachman, so I've heard this. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was Rav Dessler. I don't know if maybe Rav Dessler brings it from the Ramchal's understanding as well. But Rabbi Nachman really, in this chapter, and he speaks about it other places in Likutei Moharan, adds a whole different dimension to it that those other sources don't speak about. And for me, it was one of the most novel ideas that I came across in Yiddishkeit, in Jewish thought and understanding when we learned it. But we'll get to it shortly. So the desert, as Rabbi Yaakov Klein speaks about, so he's going to explain this in two different ways, but one primary way, where each of these places represents a different stage of avodas Hashem, of our practice in Yiddishkeit. The desert, being a desert, is the desolate place where there's nothing and there's very little growth and everything is very hard, and it's hard even just to survive, right? Never mind to keep trekking through it another day, and everything is very difficult at this point. The next stage, if a person, and a person needs a lot of his chazkus, a lot of what's the word for his chazkus?
Strengthening.
Encouragement. What?
Yeah. Strengthening encouragement
to be able to get through the stage of desert. After that comes the field. So the field is already, as he says, things are growing there. There's food, but it's and you see the fruit of your own labors, right? And there's a lot of labor there. You're working very hard, but at that point, at least you're starting to see the fruits of your labor, quite literally. And the final stage being the forest, where the forest, everything everything is just growing on its own. You don't really need to do a whole lot. And at that spiritual stage of development, he's saying, you know, this is somebody who's been through the desert, he's been through the field, he's done a lot of work, and at that point, things are really just flowing. But that comes with its own dangers and its own challenges.
Okay, so let's hold it there for a second. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's look at each individual stage now, and maybe I'll try to look at these through some different types of experiences that we may have or that I may have had. So like this, the desert. What's a desert like? What's the characteristics of a desert? Right, a desert is dry, and the sun is burning down, right? And there's nothing, there's no life, right? What are there? A few cactuses and maybe some snakes, right? But there's no life there, and it's hot and dry. What happens if you spend the day out in the desert? You lose all of your life, your chiyus. You're drying out. You're thirsty. You have nothing, and you can't. You're a shell of a person in the desert if you spend time out in the desert. And when we think of a desert, the desert is a place where people don't live. So it's a place of loneliness. It's a place of where a person is alone and finds themselves separated from maybe a family support, community support. I have nothing. I'm out all on my own. And not only am I all on my own, but everything's being sucked out of me. I don't have energy. I don't have chiyus, right? I'm mamish in such
you're hopeless. There's a sense of hopelessness. Someone who gets lost in the desert. You don't know which way you came from, which way you're going necessarily, and it's where you're going to get food, how you're going to. It's a very confusing time.
So in this sense, it represents an aspect of our lives and our growth where we're in this type of stage. So it could be. I like to think of these things. I know it's these labels that I usually say I don't like to use, but sometimes we just have to use these types of things. Let's say you have someone who's a Baal Tshuva who did not grow up religious, right? And this can apply to someone who grew up from just equally, but this is one way we can see it. A person can find themselves who didn't grow up connected to Torah, connected to this type of inspiration. They can find themselves looking at life and feeling this type of sensation. I have no more excitement. What am I doing here? Is this it? Right? Is this all that life is supposed to be about? This epizotognis without frumkeit that I've been living, and just trying to attain something and trying to have relationships and relationships falling apart and just things. And the whole world, where's the whole world going? Where's my job going? This is all I'm here for? Is just to have a job and live a few years and that's it? Like what am I missing? A person can feel a sense that something's missing. I don't have something. In a sense, spiritually, a person can feel dried up. And like there's no more energy left. My chiyus is all missing. Right? And I can feel like in the same type of situation, a person can feel like how did I get here? Where's my community? Where's my support? Where's my people who that we should be working towards something together? Am I the only one who thinks that there's got to be more to life? Right? So a person can find themselves in such a situation before a person wakes up and starts to look for the princess. This is where we start off, is in the spiritual desert, right? And then what happens? What happens to that person? They wake up a little bit and they start to get excited and they start to go into a place where they start to see growth. They start to see, oh, wow, you know what? This is pretty exciting. I can see there's spirituality here. I can see there's things that are exciting. I can see there's meaning to life. I can see amazing things happening, right? But at that stage also, I'm not connected enough. I don't have enough experience, right? I can't just pick up a Likutei Moharan and spend hours learning it and be totally spiritually on fire for hours. right? I don't have the tools. I don't have the resources. So right now, at this stage, yeah, I'm in a field. You know what happens in a field? Toil. A field is where a farmer's working. A field is where the vineyard workers are working, and it's a cultivating and pruning and trimming and harvesting and all these things. It's hard work, but I see growth, and I'm able to eat some fruits from it, right? Oh, but then I can get to a stage where I have tremendous growth, and I've been at it for a while, and I've experienced some things, and now I can see. I look around and I see I'm in a forest. What's a forest? There's life everywhere. There's trees everywhere. There's berries. There's everything you can imagine. And you know what? It's just there. It's not there with all the toil. It's not there like a farmer having to work together. A forest just grows, right? So in that sense, there's a progression of growth that someone who didn't grow up religious could experience. So the next stage, what's the next stage after the forest? The next stage after the forest is the desert again.
1 second.
I'll tell you why I'm going there. I'll tell you why I'm going.
Religious can also.
Okay, that's exactly why I'm saying this.
For sure does.
Exactly why I'm saying this. Right? So after the forest, the next stage is the desert, meaning that for whatever reason, we'll talk about a few reasons. When I get to that tremendous level of growth, like we've said, probably in almost every shir I've ever given, there has to be a yerida before we can have an aliyah. Before I can get any higher, I have to go back down. I have to experience a bit of a descent before I can go back down, before I can go back up. And we've given the mushals before of like if you want to jump on a trampoline, you got to first bend your knees and go deep down. And only then can you jump up and go very high, right? Just a mushal, right? There's many mushals we could say like this, right? But the idea being that there's going to be a fall afterwards, and it's going to be the start of another growth process, right? That's a bit of a spoiler alert because we're going to talk about that more. Why am I saying that? Because like Shmuley just was about to say, someone who grew up religious is going to face the same thing. It's the same thing. Just maybe let's say that the person who grew up connected to Torah had a certain point had a certain period of their life where things were good and things were rolling. And like Rabbi Yaakov Klein says in the book, when that little child was able to sing, was able to close their eyes and sing the songs, where that little child was able to experience Hanukkah with just excitement, right? And light the candles, happiness and excitement, and there's no baggage, right? Nothing's weighing that child down. Just total happiness, total love and excitement, right? But at some point, that child also is going to hit the desert. That child also is going to be like, wait a second, what's going on? What am I doing? And is going to find themselves in a situation of dryness and of a lack of chiyus, a lack of excitement, a lack of life in their Yiddishkeit. And at that point, they're at the beginning of a cycle, which comes at the end of the previous cycle. But it's important to know, and Shmuley, tell me what you have to say about this, but this is our lives. The story of our lives, this is going to repeat over and over again in our lives, many times, that we're going to go from desert to field to forest. And then at that point, we'll talk about what can happen in the forest that can be difficult. We're going to find ourselves back in the desert. And of course, the desert is where we're gonna find our ultimate salvation. But we'll see when we get there. What do you got to say, Shmuley?
So this is what I was alluding to, that I think is Rabbi Nachman's chiddush on this idea of the spiral. We saying that the spiral is you're going to the same places, but you're going higher and higher and higher. So the question is, why does it feel like I'm going lower sometimes? It doesn't address that. It doesn't address the guy who's, like we're saying, who's in the forest and everything's going well. And then all of a sudden, we spoke about this before, you feel like you have the floor pulled out from under you. And all of a sudden you wake up one day and you're like, 1 second, a week ago, everything was great, or a month ago, everything was great. And now I'm facing such struggle. And without an angle to understand why this is, you think it's just because of your own failure. You think that, and then you start questioning, well, maybe even when things were going well, maybe that wasn't real, and you don't understand what's going on. So Rabbi Nachman says it, it's reflected here in the story, but he speaks about it in Likutei Moharan in other places where it's this idea, you read the Tzorech Aliyah, but he explains it, he goes more in depth with it in it. So in Pnimius HaTorah and some of the deeper Torah, we know that every level that can be achieved in holiness is, there are two parts to it. There's what's called the klipa, which means the peel or the husk or the thing that's blocking it, and it's a negative thing that needs to be overcome. And then once you get past that, there's the fruit, which is the thing you want. It's the thing you want to get to, right? When you have a fruit, you want to peel away the husk, the peel, because it served a purpose, but its purpose is no longer, you want to eat the fruit now. The purpose of the husk is gone, and you want to get to the fruit. So what Rabbi Nachman explains, that naturally this must happen. It's not that, you're not as holy as the next person, or you're not doing it quite right, and therefore that's why you keep stumbling and hitting these challenges. That's not how it is. It is built into the system that in order to go from one level to a higher level, you've gone from the forest of the lower level back to the bottom, the desert, the husk of the higher level. So one of the ways that we explain it to, that it was explained to me is the video game mashal. The video game mashal, Rabbi Gisselson? I think we've spoken about it.
I think so, yeah.
I don't know how many video game people we have in this particular shir, but anyways.
This is the mashal for men 40 and under.
Right. Well, anyways, I'm going to say it. So when you start off in the video game, right, you start off and things are on level 1, things are difficult, right? But it's level 1, so you figure it out pretty quickly. And then level 1 becomes a breeze. And then you get to level 2. And all of a sudden things are hard again, right? Why? Because the bad guys or the challenges that you need to overcome are harder challenges. But it was just easy for you. Now it's hard again. You didn't get worse. You're being faced with a harder challenge on a higher level, and you hopefully have more tools now because you've overcome level 1. Now you're ready for level 2 challenges. You've overcome level 2. You're ready for level 3 challenges. But level 3 is now going to be a challenge, right? So in Yiddishkeit, in Avodas Hashem, in life in general, it's such an important idea, and it's such a chizuk and an encouragement to know that when you go from a period of things being relatively smooth and going relatively, I'm not going to say easy, but let's say smooth, and now things are hard again, it's not because you're falling down, it's because you're going up.
I also found this to be one of the most invigorating and comforting Torahs from Rabbi Nachman that I ever heard. This, because it makes so much sense, and it's so obvious once you think about it. Another mashal I like to use to explain this, that I think makes a lot of sense, is that imagine you're like a corporate America type of person, right? So imagine you go to apply for a company and you start at the bottom, you're in the mailroom or whatever, right? So what do you have to do to get into the company? You have an interview, you give your resume and you have an interview. You have to face the interview, and everybody's nervous at an interview, right? It's something you have to go through, and maybe you have to do, you have to show that you have certain skills. Okay, you get the job. Then you're going to go, maybe a year later, you're going to apply for the next level in this corporation, right? And so, okay, now you have to show that you have some other skills, and you have to face an interview that's maybe a little bit more difficult. Maybe you're going to ask some harder questions until you go lamaila, until you're going to be applying for the job of the CEO. Okay, hold on a second. Now you're going to apply for this. You're going to be interviewed by each board member, and they're going to do a background check, and they're going to check all of your social media accounts, and they're going to do everything that they have to do. It's going to be such an intense interview Because why? Because you're on such a high, you just got to such a high level. And in order to break through that, to get that job of CEO, you got to break through that husk at that level, right? So too, I think we should all take this to heart. Don't forget this. This is such an awesome point of chizuk, right? When we find ourselves struggling, it's not because I've fallen and I'm a worse person than I ever was. Chas v'shalom, God forbid. If I find myself struggling, I know that I've broken through something and I'm on a new level. And now I have new challenges to face to break through that level. What an important message. What an important message. And if you think about it, it's so obvious and so true just with the human condition. I'm always moving, I'm always growing, I'm always changing and adapting and becoming a better person, right? So of course, whenever I'm facing challenges, it must be at that new level of the new person that I am, right? It's so comforting and such an amazing lesson, so important. And this is the first part of the journey of the viceroy, right? So I want to talk a little bit quickly about the forest. And Shmuel, you can stop me anytime if you have something to add. But so it sounds like the forest, right? The forest is also, connected to the tzaddik and all these amazing ideas. So the forest is also a dangerous place, is something that Rabbi Yaakov brings, which is a really important idea. What's dangerous about it? What could be, pardon me, how could we fall in the forest? So there's two ideas that he brings. First is that we can find ourselves in such a place, and we might imagine if we're talking about the growth line, and all of a sudden we get to a place where we're learning this amazing Torah, we feel inspired, we found ourselves in a certain, what's the word I'm looking for, groove, right? And I'm inspired and I have good friends and things are great, to have a nice community, everything's happy, right? So I might begin to think that I don't have to look for the princess anymore, right? I might begin to think that, wow, I'm standing here in this forest and there's growth and there's beauty, and wow, this is really enjoyable. I'm just going to stay here. I'm just going to stay here. So the story tells us that's not the journey. First of all, the beginning, we have to be a hoylech. We have to keep going. We cannot stay in that place. We have to keep looking. We have to keep searching. And also the story is showing us, you know what? After that, we're going to go and find ourselves in a new level. We can't stop there. Rabbi Nachman says famously in his Torah Vav, which I like to talk about as often as possible, which by the way is Rabbi Yaakov Klein's next book is on Torah Vav. But it says over there that there's these two existences of Ratzav Hashoiv, of running and returning, and Baki be Ratzai Baki b'Shoiv, and that the pasuk in Tehillim tells us that im esak shemayim, if I will go up to shemayim, I'll get to a very high level. The pasuk says in Tehillim, sham ata, right? What does that mean, sham ata? It means you're there. It doesn't mean you're here. When I get to a high place, I have to say, says David HaMelech in Tehillim, if I get to a high place, I have to say, oh Hashem, you're still there. You're still somewhere else. I got to keep going. I can't, the pitfall of getting to such a high level is the pitfall of the forest, right? The pitfall of getting to a high level is the fact that I might think I'm done, or I might think I'm great. Wow, look how much I've grown. Look how great I can learn now. Look at all these things I know. This is fantastic, right? That's wrong. That's not what we're going to. Sham ata. You're way over there. And the opposite is true in the midbar, in the desert, which is the second part of the pasuk in Tehillim, which says and if I'll make my bed in the pit, low down, if I find myself in such a low place, what does it say? Hineka. Hashem, you're here. When I'm in that low place, my avoda is to know that Hashem is with me. Hashem's holding my hand. Hashem's right there with me in that low place. But when I'm in that high place, I have to say, I still have a long way to go. And I always have to be moving, and I always have to be going. So this aspect of Torah Vav, I believe, relates directly to these levels of midbar, desert, field, and forest. So what happens, Shmuley, after how do we end up in the forest? Is it back in the desert? What happens?
What happens?
Or what are we doing back in the forest, back in the desert?
Back in the desert.
Yeah.
Like what went wrong, you mean?
No, well, why do we have to end up back in the desert?
Why do we have to end up back in the desert?
Yeah.
So I just want to add quickly, Rabbi Nachman says in Torah Chaf Hey, just on this, we've said it many different ways, but he says it explicitly. Uvezet Taina Chasidim Harbe. In this point, the Chasidim often make a mistake that, I'll just read it in English, that it suddenly appears to them as if they have fallen from avodas Hashem. But in truth, this is not a descent at all. It is only that they need to proceed from level to level. And at that point, the impure forces, the desires, the confusions, the delusions, the negative thoughts, and the obstacles become strong again. Therefore, one must overpower them each time anew in order to subjugate these powers and shatter these obstacles which are found in each and every phase. But in truth, this is in no way considered a descent at all. So, just wanted to add that in.
So much of Rabbi Nachman's Torah is this concept also, right? In Memches 48 in Tinyana, he says that when a person starts to make movement in avodas Hashem, nidmeloi hisrachakos, right away, he starts to feel distance. Hashem shows him distance. Hashem puts him this. In other words, this is the same thing. Once you start to move to the forest, Hashem's going to put you into the desert, right? And you're going to experience desert. So it's also two things as we move forward here. It's something that I'm changing the word of how I use it. One word. I'm going to call it now the tshuva honeymoon, because it doesn't matter whether you're a Baal tshuva or whether you were born from. It's not the Baal tshuva honeymoon. It's the tshuva honeymoon. What does that mean? It means that when we start to grow and we start to do things, like Rabbi Breidowitz used to say, you find someone who's coming close to Yiddishkeit and they're experiencing sukkahs, and it's so geschmack. I'm sitting outside in the fall time in a sukkah, and there's people around, and there's amazing meals and singing and divrei Torah, and people are so happy and connective, and the children are there, and it's beautiful, and I'm going through all this stuff, and it's so amazing. And growth and growth and growth and learning all these new things. It's fantastic. And then boom, we hit something knocks us down. That happens. My question is, and it's also another one of Rabbi Nachman's answers that is very important for me to understand. Why does it have to be this way? Why do we have to go desert, field, forest, and then desert again? Why can't we go desert, field, forest, bigger forest? I don't know, Mars, the Milky Way, I don't know. Why do we have to keep going back down? Why do we have to keep having a Yerida for the purpose of an Aliyah? Why does it have to be this way? Is it a game? So one of the things that I saw in Rabbi Nachman a long time ago, I saw in Rabbi Nosson, that is very important, is that he said like this. I think we intuitively understand this, but if we would just keep going and going and going, and everything would always work out, everything would always just work out, and we would keep growing and nothing would ever pull us down. We just keep on that track. As we grow spiritually and are closest to Hashem, you know what else grows with that? Is our ego. It's not gonna happen that as we grow, we'll somehow become more humble, right? We're gonna keep growing in our ego. And the reason why we have to go down and have a Yerida, the reason why we have to go back into the desert, this is probably the most important thing over here, is because that's where we get broken down. And when I say broken down, I don't mean in a negative way. I mean that's where we experience the midbar is the place of leis la migar meklum. The midbar is the place where I have nothing there. I'm an open vessel. We spoke many times about Torah Aleph in the Kutimaran, about how in order for us to be able to receive what we need to from Hashem, in order for us to grow, to receive the light from Hashem, Chachma from Hashem, we have to empty ourselves out. We have to be an open vessel. We have to be this aspect of Malchus, of the desert, of Leis la migar meklum. I have nothing of my own. And only once I'm broken down like this, and it's really more of a purification, am I ready to receive what Hashem has to give me, right? And this is why we always have to go back to the desert in our growth pattern, right? Unless the whole universe would change, this always has to happen. And you can imagine, it's you can think of a character in today's day and age who, from the time they're young, everything goes great, everything's going well, and they're making a lot of money and going to all the fanciest places and everything. And as they go, so does their ego, so does the way they treat other people, right? It's not healthy, and it's not the goal. The goal is not to go up, 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 and up. The goal is to prepare ourselves to be able to have that connection with the princess. And in order to do that, we have to embody this aspect of being humble, being a leis la migar meklum person. And as we go higher, we have to check ourselves, and we have to be given the opportunity to embody this aspect of leis la migar meklum, of I have nothing of my own, in order so that I can receive. We have to remember that's always the goal. So it has to be that the next level is always to the midbar, to the desert, to the place of loneliness, the place of isolation, the place of where there's not food, there's nothing going on there. And it's also, if I could just add this one more thing, the desert is called midbar. And this is kind of in conflict a little bit with one of the explanations coming up, but not really. The desert is called midbar because midbar means also the lashon of dibur. And dibur is, of course, referencing tefillah, hisbodedus. What happens? This is part of the Torah, of the Gemara, everything. This concept of koichi va'otzim yadi, right? That we're gonna, if we just feel like we're accomplishing everything, we're gonna forget about Hashem, chas v'shalom. We're gonna forget about Hashem. But when we find ourselves in the desert, we have this longing to cry out to Hashem. The desert is the midbar. The desert is the place of dibur. The desert is the place where we're going to connect to Hashem finally, where we're going to actually reach out from the depths of our heart because we're broken down. From that place of being broken down, from that place of lev nishbar, right? Now I can really reach out to Hashem from the depths of my heart with truth, from my real essence. I need to talk to Hashem. I need to connect to Hashem, right? That's what the desert does, the midbar. And that's where we have to end up to take the next step in the process of finding the lost princess. What do you got, Shmuley?
So on this, on a similar note, but it's a little bit different. So he speaks in the book a little bit on page 99, and after that, he brings from the Baal Shem Tov and from Rav Hillel Zeitlin this idea of that the Baal Shem Tov emphasized often of halos hamidos, which is being able to elevate all types of midos. Here in this context, I think it means emotions, to be able to use any emotion to serve Hashem with, and not just being in a state of being able to serve Hashem when I'm feeling really good, and when I'm feeling happy. Okay, great. Now I'm gonna go daven and really connect. But even when we're feeling, like you're saying, when we're feeling broken down, and it's very real, people who, we go through life, and as we get older, inevitably everybody has their challenges, their big challenges, right? No matter who you are, you have big challenges in your life. And as the saying goes, I mean, lahavdil, there's no atheists in a foxhole. We know that being in a state of despair, of I feel like I can't do this, brings you to I can't do this without you, Hashem. And it's a really a whole different way of connecting, and in a lot of ways it's a deeper way of connecting. Lo aleinu, this shouldn't have to happen to us, but it's well documented that often people who experience losses in a family, it can often draw the family closer together, or any type of difficulty has that potential to cause people to assess sort of where you are and who you are and what's going on, and then to want to reach out and connect to your family, to people close to you, to chaverim, to friends, and most of all to Hashem. So that's another point.
So Tevra, I think we're for sure going to need 2 weeks on this chapter. We can't. The next part is like one of the most awesome things in the whole Sefer, and it's going to take time. But so let's not rush. This is a great opportunity. Like, remember, we're learning this. We want to take this with us. We want to be able to use this wisdom and to help us in our search, right? So I think it's super important that this concept, we were talking last week about these different perspectives of Galus and Geula, right? So what's happening to a person? A Galus way of looking at things, right? An exile way of looking at things is, sometimes people will say, this person, why there's no atheists in the foxhole? Yeah, but that's just because they were scared. Yeah, and so that person became religious because they were a drug addict, and so they found God, or because they had some kind of terrible tragedy, so they found God, right? And people have a tendency to look at that as a weakness. You hear what I'm saying? We don't need God because we have a fancy car and we have all this, and we don't. That person needs God because they hit rock bottom, right? So rock bottom can be looked at as a weakness, and that's a gullus way of looking at things. Really, rock bottom and challenges are a gift from Hashem, and are Hashem taking his hands and putting them right on a person. And it's as if Hashem is saying, I'm working with you, I'm here with you, I'm guiding you every step of the way. Right? Hashem gives rebuke, Hashem gives difficulties and challenges to those who he loves. So when a person is feeling challenges like this, they have to know from a Geula mindset that, wow, okay, Hashem is with me. Once again, one of the lessons we have to take from here, one of the aspects that we need to learn is, how do I behave during the midbar? How do I get through the midbar? How do I get through the desert? And we're developing a number of tools throughout this whole thing over here. One of the things is, like Shmuley said before, which is mamish gold, is to remember that if I find myself in the midbar, it's because I'm in a new level, and I have to work again to work through this next level and get to the next promotion. But it's because I'm closer to Hashem, and therefore I have to face bigger challenges. That's one thing. Or new challenges, not necessarily bigger. I have to face new challenges, right? So that's a good news story. That's chizuk, right? That's something to think about, something to keep up there when I'm in the desert to remember, right? And then there's this other aspect. When I'm in the desert, and when I see that Hashem put me in the desert, I know I should think of it as a kiss from Hashem, as a hug from Hashem, as if I can feel Hashem taking my hand and leading me into the desert. Because that's a period where I can experience a Lev Nishbar. I can become an open book. I can become someone who's ready to receive something new from Hashem that I wasn't ready to receive before I went into the desert. I would never be able to receive what Hashem has in store for me in this next level if I was not able to get rid of some garbage. So now I'm in the desert. Now I'm in that place, and I can break down a little bit. I can get rid of some garbage and realize what's really important. And I can be a medaber. I can cry out to Hashem. I can speak to Hashem. I can do his boidadus, and I can really, really start to find Hashem from that place, right? So this is the tools that we need. Another thing that we have to have with us, a tool that we have to have with us that he brings down here, and I've seen now in a few places in Reb Nosson and Rabbi Nachman, is that when someone's in the desert, what's the anchor that we have to hold on to? Right? Shmuley said this already. That when I'm in the desert, I have to know that in that place, even though I don't feel it, and even though I'm not as inspired as I was in the forest that I was in before, right? I got to hold on. I got to hold on to my Shabbos candles. I got to hold on to putting on my tefillin. I got to hold on to keeping kosher. I got to hold on to going to shul. I got to keep holding on to these things and keep those anchors attached. That's the avoda in the desert to a certain extent. So remember that I'm here for a purpose. Remember that Hashem put me here, and that it's because I'm just heading to a new level, and to hold on to those things, because those are the things that keep me on the journey while I'm stuck in the desert, right? Rabbi Weinberger says like a terrifying thing. It's hard to say. I couldn't say it myself, but he says, you see that a lot of the Holocaust survivors who came to America, that there was kind of two different versions. Some of them, and certainly me, and really none of us, and nobody can find fault in them or can look at them in any kind of negative way whatsoever. But some of them couldn't hold on. Couldn't hold on to the Shabbos candles, and couldn't hold on to yeshiva, couldn't hold on to Shabbos. They just couldn't do it. They went through too much. It was too painful. They couldn't hold on. And so they stopped. They let go of that. They let go of that anchor. And others came back and they did the opposite. They held on to the anchor and they kept going and they kept going. And so he says, you see, those ones that didn't hold on to the anchor and didn't hold on to that while they were in the midbar, where are their great grandkids now? Most of the time, they're not even Jewish at all. They have no connection whatsoever to Yiddishkeit, right? Mashen Kain, the stories of those who held on. There's a beautiful picture that was put out a couple of years ago of a woman who was a Holocaust survivor. And she went from Europe to Eretz Yisrael as the lone survivor from her entire family. And there's a picture of this woman as a great grandmother sitting in front of the kotel with hundreds of her family that came from her, and all of her children and her children's children and her children's children, over 200 people that came from this one lady who survived, the only one that survived from her entire family. Can you imagine? And they're sitting in Yerushalayim. Can you imagine if someone told her when she found herself with her whole family wiped out? What was she thinking? And can you imagine if someone said to her, they didn't need to say it to her, but just hang on. Because you know what? You're going to be sitting one day in front of the place of the Beis HaMikdash in Yerushalayim, safe and secure, with over 200 people that came from you, right? No one said that to her, and she did it anyway. But that's holding on in the desert. That's hanging on in the desert. And anyone who has experienced tremendous growth in their own Yiddishkeit and their own Torah. And I look around this group over here, and many of you that I know have been through serious deserts and have been hanging on. And through hanging on, how much has been accomplished over that time? How much growth has happened? How many connections have been made? How many new ways of looking at the world and how much spiritual growth has happened, right? And if you didn't hang on in the desert, we wouldn't be sitting here together. We wouldn't all be on this journey together, right? So what beautiful eitzah that comes out this chapter and of this idea. So much chizuk, strengthening, encouragement to know that the desert is a place where it's preparing us for the next level and for growth and to continue to grow over and over again. We got to remember these things. This is the Eitzah, if I had to say, from this first half of the 5th chapter. This is what we got to take home with us, in my opinion. What do you guys think? Yeah, Sandra, you got something?
Yeah, let's open it up.
I have a question. So, so we know the princess is found, right? We know that.
Yeah.
But we're talking that life is a journey. So is the princess only found at the end of your life, or are there moments in time throughout the life that you find it? Like, it's just, I'm wondering is like, and you obviously know what I'm going through. So I understand exactly all these tests you're talking about. And it's good to hear that, I'm at another level, my spiritual growth, because it can be very hard at times. But I'm just wondering about that journey.
Right. Well, you see, in the story, I don't know which chapter it's going to be on. Is it the chapter 6? Yeah. 1 second. That's going to be in chapter 7, I think. Yeah, chapter 7 is going to be, to answer the question from the story, the first time that the viceroy finds the princess. Right? He's gonna find her, and it's gonna be a certain type of finding the princess. That's when his relationship with the princess is going to begin, and this leg of his journey is going to begin, right? So the answer is that the ultimate finding of the princess is something that we're each going to experience either when Mashiach comes or maybe at the end of our lives, but along the journey there's going to be different encounters with the princess. And just like this chapter, really, right, that we're going through desert, field, forest, right? So I think it's important to say, I got to say this. I don't know if I said it to this group or not, but there's a famous thing they say about Rabbi Nachman. This is so awesome. Famous thing they say about Rabbi Nachman, that he said that if you come to his grave and you give a little bit to tzedakah and you say tikkun haklali, he will do everything he can to pull you out of Gehenna, to pull you out of hell. So I heard from, I can't remember who I heard this from, said that the tradition in Breslov is that he wasn't talking about like, after you die. He was saying that Rabbi Nachman's Torah right now can pull us out of hell. When life is just the worst desert we can imagine, through learning this Torah of Rabbi Nachman, we can be pulled out of it, and we can experience life in a whole different way, right? And I know personally for me, I have to be careful when I say this, but literally amongst the top experiences of my entire life, the top most deep periods of joy and ecstatic experience and excitement and love, right? So what do you have? You got your children and your spouse, and on that same level is certain times learning the Torah of Rabbi Nachman, when it gets very deep and things come together on an incredibly deep way. There's nothing better in the world, nothing more amazing, nothing more connective and spiritually fulfilling. One of Rabbi Nachman's Torahs says, Ashrei ish, Ashrei hazoiche lahargish neimus haTorah. Fortunate is the person, happy is the person who is able to feel the sweetness of the Torah. And when this is one aspect of what I'm trying to say. I know it's a long-winded answer, but that when we do that, we're getting a little bit of the princess. It's not the full picture, but there we just came out of the desert. We came out of hell. We just touched the princess. We just had a princess experience, and very powerfully. So, like Shmuley always used to fight with me about that. He's right. Don't worry. That we can experience Gan Eden in this world also, right? And that's these times when we are able to experience the princess somehow, and that experience can be also this. It doesn't have to be just that. It can be, that moment where your son becomes bar mitzvah. It can be under the chuppah of your daughter, right? It can be these amazing experiences that you have with under your own chuppah, right? For some of you, it should be soon. Yeah.
But I think what Rabbi Nachman wants, and the finding of the princess needs to be accessible. We want it to be accessible, those experiences, in more than just those big happy life events, right? We want it to be accessible on a Friday night davening, or a Hanukkah, or whatever mitzvahs we have at that time, or his boidus, speaking to Hashem, connecting to Hashem, to be able to access those higher levels of emotional being and feeling and thinking throughout different times in our life, right? So I think you have probably people, and they're few and far between, who have found the princess, and they're just living this 24/7. And again, they're few and far between. I can maybe think of I can count on my hand people that I would say maybe, at least externally, it seems that way, are those kind of people. But for many of us, it's like you're saying, it's ups and downs. It's ups and downs as reflected by this chapter with the deserts and the fields and the forests, and then back to the deserts. And then ultimately, as expressed later in the story, of finding the princess, and then maybe you lose her for a while, and it repeats. But the goal is to ultimately free her, not just find her, at which point she doesn't get lost anymore. And I think that experience is individual to each person, right? You can't just check a certain box and say, oh, I did it. It's something internal that comes after a long time, and when it happens, you'll know it.
Any other comments or questions, ideas? Anybody, or should we finish it off here?
Hi, can I say something?
Yeah, Leah, please go ahead.
I really enjoy the moments, the days that I am up and I can hear these conversations. I really love this group. I really love the whole way that it's done and the ideas that are expressed. It's really a beautiful experience. So
Okay.
Yishar Koach first. I wanted to just say, so what Sandra was, discussing about finding the princess. And I think I don't know if it's only unique to this particular Rav Klein's interpretation of the story, but it's kind of like sometimes when people start reading the story, they think, okay, well, who am I? Am I the princess? Am I the viceroy and the giants? Or, people who've read the full book. And they try and identify with one of these people. But it's not like that, because as we discussed here, it's so dynamic. There's the rights for Shav. Our lives are in constant, movement. So sometimes we're the princess, and sometimes we're the viceroy searching for the princess. And sometimes we do touch her and we feel her. And I think going back, I think it's in chapter 2, just discussing about what really Yiddishkeit can be like. And the Ma'or line brings in that the Skava mitzvah is the mitzvah itself. So, what does that really mean? It means that in that moment of doing that mitzvah, whatever that is going to be, if it's going to be a davening or it's going to be, connecting with someone, whatever that mitzvah is at that moment, we really can experience paradise in this world. We can experience that Gan Eden here. We can touch the princess. Because if we're not focused on the Iskar Olam Haba, then we're going to get, okay, that's something else. But if we're focused on Olam Hazeh and trying to bring the princess into our lives, and that's where we're at, and we're trying to connect to Hashem in that way, so it's the greatest pleasure. It's the sweetest, beautiful, most deep and deep way to connect to Hashem at that moment. And for me, just as a Jewish woman, lighting candles, Erev Shabbos, no woman, and even people who are traditional and don't keep Shabbos, many of my family in South Africa. So at that moment, when everyone's lighting candles, not one woman, whether she's keeping all the mitzvahs and she's very strict or she's not strict or she's not keeping, but she's lighting the candles and everyone feels the princess at that moment. There's that moment where it doesn't matter who you are. You connect to that inner side. You connect to, to that chelik Elokai Mimao. And that, I feel, is touching the princess. And we can have that experience so many times in our days. Because if we just remember that, okay, that's the work. It's the avoda. It's a constant avoda, I think, for everyone, even for great tzaddikim, because then they have different levels of finding the princess within their princess life. But our consciousness and our geula awareness of these are moments which are bringing the geula closer. Because the more and more of these moments we have, so that's, each person will be coming closer to their own personal Yeshua. And then we'll have the global Yeshua of Mashiach, Emet Hashem.
Amen.
Fantastic. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
You just gave me this thought, Leah, of like what it would be like. Imagine what it would be like to walk into a room full of people who have found the princess, and you're the only one who hasn't. You would you would switch very quickly, I think. Like imagine the whole world just finds the princess, what that would look like. Everyone was just walking around happy and connected and content and full of love at all times. It would just something to think about.
Awesome.
That's Hashem.
Okay, Chavra, is there anything else, or should we call it for today? Thank you, everybody, for joining. And by the way, I didn't expect that we were going to do this. I thought we would start to touch the next point. The next point that we're going to deal with, which is the Shvil Echad Min Hatzad, the path to the side, is really, mamish, one of the most awesomest, important parts of the whole thing. And there's a lot to say about it and a lot of practical things. But I look forward, I want to say, Shmuley, I'm looking forward to seeing your challenge for us to, we talked about a lot of practical things. I'm looking forward to seeing your comment as to how we're going to take this and put it into our week this week. So thank you to everybody, and we're looking forward to seeing you all next week in Ritz Hashem.
Feel better.
Thank you. Zayizvin to everybody. All the best.
Good night, everybody.
Night.